And tonight we're going to be talking about something that we have not really had been around to touch base on, but we're going to talk about slavery. People who believe in the Bible, and they think that the whole Bible is just full of moral goodness. And you know what? They're full of shit. The Bible is not full of moral goodness. There's a lot of crap that's in there. Some people say, well, there's some pretty things in there. Yeah, that doesn't outweigh the bad shit that's in there. People, or especially Christians, will say, you know what? It wasn't like that. They could let him go after a certain amount of time. Well, according to the Bible, and I'm going to read this. This is from Exodus 21, from passage 2 to 11. It says, "When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall be let go free for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be the master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to God, and shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever." When a man sells his daughter as a slave, isn't that great? Sells your daughter as a slave. When a man shall sell his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has been designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, her marital rights. And if she does not do these things for her, he shall go out for nothing without payment of money. Some people would say, well, you know what? It wasn't so bad. It was like slave wages. We just kind of talked about that in the last segment here. Or they were indentured servants, where they thought they were, it doesn't matter if they taught them really well or not. These are slaves, because you could hand these people down to your children. Like you would hand down a VCR or a tape deck or whatever. You know, this is wrong. The Bible is full of crap. And this just goes to show that people who think that you get moral implications from the Bible, you try to tell them this and they'll try to explain it away. And it just makes me fucking sick. We're going to start the timer, and the timer is right here somewhere. There it is. And the timer starts now. Connie, your thoughts?
Well, a loving God, I would think, would rise above the conventions of the day, and it would have a revolutionary view due to its omniscience, and see and know beyond the primitive mind and the ancient society. If there was an all-powerful creator who decided to communicate with us, let alone be a loving father, he would forbid slavery. It would be the one of those edicts I would actually expect him to give. Slaves are property. They're little more than animals. They are owned like cattle and sheep. And the creationists are always saying we have all this dominion over them. Then why is this happening? And it's abusive. The indentured slave was only indentured if they were the right race or gender. In other words, Israelite males.
Right.
And Christians like to wax on about the slavery being all right, but you know that they love their masters so much and they were treated good. But a cage is still a cage. Right. Just because one or two, slave owners might have been nice to their slaves doesn't make it right. And
right.
These slaves couldn't own their own lives. So, so much for free will, so much for all of the things that everybody say is so important to God. And I think slavery proves how petty and small that this God of the Bible is, and how he is nothing but a reflection cast in the mirror of other human beings. He's just an invention of humans.
Right.
And it's just an excuse for man to be inhumane to man.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and Dawkins' dog pointed out in the chat room there, and I was going to get round to that. Now, that was just for the Hebrew slaves. The 7 years thing there, that was just for the Hebrew slaves. If you were not a Hebrew, or you were from another nation, I guess, you were able to take those people for slaves forever. And it's sickening. It doesn't matter if they came in with a wife or not. They were yours forever, and that makes it even worse. Even a gilded cage is still a cage. Doesn't matter. Dave, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts on this. The first is that, people defend this all the time when you debate them on the Bible and slavery, and they'll say that it's different and this and that. And these passages have been interpreted differently by different people. However, I think it's pretty explicit that if you read what's written, it is justifying slavery. In fact, I mean, the Confederacy during the Civil War, Jefferson Davis, I've got a quote here from him,
Okay.
where he says, slavery, was established by decree of Almighty God. It is sanctioned in the Bible in both testaments from Genesis to Revelation. It has existed in all ages, has been found among the people of the highest civilization and in the nations of the highest proficiency in the arts. Let the gentlemen go to Revelation to learn the decree of God. Let them go to the Bible. I said that slavery was sanctioned in the Bible, authorized, regulated, and recognized from Genesis to Revelation. Slavery existed in the earliest ages and among the chosen people of God, and in Revelation we are told that it shall exist till the end of time shall come. You find it in the Old and New Testaments, in the prophecies, Psalms, and in the epistles of Paul. You find it recognized and sanctioned everywhere. And that's Jefferson Davis. That's the president of the Confederacy,
Right.
Using the Bible to justify his position on slavery. It's sickening, and it is in the Bible. It is justified, and Jefferson Davis was not wrong to quote the Bible. Of course, the North then took the more relaxed interpretations of the Bible, where it's be like Christ, and it's the overall idea of Christ being forgiving and all of that, which then ignores all sorts of portions of the Bible, and obviously the New Testament as well, which did nothing to change slavery.
Right.
To people who sit there and say that it's so much different than other forms of slavery, and it's indentured servitude and all of that, I would offer to them Exodus 21:20 through 21, which is when a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod so hard that his slave dies under his hand, he shall be punished. If, however, the slave survives for a day or two, he is not to be punished, since the slave is his own property.
That's right.
It blows my mind that people are going to sit there and say that this is so much different when the Bible is saying that you can beat them with a rod so hard that as long as they don't die within a few days, it's fine, because it's your property. I mean, that's not indentured.
And I'm sorry. And one other thing though is, if let's say the guy didn't die in the first couple of days, but if he dies a week later, you're off the hook.
Well, yeah, and what if he's paralyzed for the rest of his life, or what if he's crippled from thereafter, or what if you blind him, or you do this or that? So long as he doesn't die, it's fine,
right? According
to the Bible. Paul turned around and returned a slave to his master, and he says to essentially go easy on him. Here, right. I'll return the slave to his master, but go easy on him.
Right.
I mean, that's absolute bullshit. And Martin Luther would justify that when he would speak, and he would say, well, this is Paul teaching us to maintain the status quo. Whatever that means, right. Maintain the status quo. Well, that's exactly what Jesus did with him never saying that slavery was wrong and continuing on with slavery from the Old Testament into the New Testament. I mean, it's absurd to me that people would justify this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And people would say, well, Jesus is such a great guy, but it says here, this is supposedly Jesus speaking from Ephesians 6:5. It says, slaves, obey your masters with deep respect and fear. Serve them sincerely as you would serve Christ. That's Jesus speaking.
Yeah, and that's what they say in the New Testament. Almost everything they speak of about slaves in the New Testament is directed towards slaves being obedient to their masters,
right,
and nothing else. I mean, the rules for how to regulate and own them is from the Old Testament, and then in the New Testament, they continue to just talk to the slaves directly and say, be obedient. That's it.
Right, and they're trying to equate this with you being... oh, there we go, and there's a timer. Quick finish my thought there, that they're trying to equate this to you're being obedient to God. You know, you're the slave in their eyes. You're the slave to God, so you have to be obedient to your master, which is God. So, and it's the same mindset. You know, if you're going to be obedient to your masters here on earth, you have to be obedient to God, who is supposed to be your master in outer space, wherever the fuck they think God is, apparently. But
well, they're consistent.
yeah, they are that. Yeah, because they're worried about God beating, whipping you, you know. But no, or just going to hell, I guess.
I just thought we needed a sarcastic cherry on
No,
top.
that's fine. But the whole notion that this passage is in the Bible, and they didn't say, you know, why didn't Jesus come out and say, hey, you know what? Then the slavery thing, don't be owning another human being in any way, shape, or form. But no, as I said before, you obey your master as you would obey Christ. So Jesus was not the big moral fucker you people think he is. And you religious people out there who do come out and watch the channel, fuck your Jesus and fuck you for thinking that this is a moral book.